just been thinking. If it wasn't Fontaine, but all of Teyvat that would be destroyed tomorrow, where would we go and what would we do?
Now that Fontaine's main arc and quests have been concluded, I can say that almost everything in Fontaine indirectly revealed the end of Teyvat. From the role of Aether and Lumion to the inevitable fall of Teyvat, all is revealed in Fontaine. In this video, I'll be going over Fontaine's crisis and theorizing about how it relates to the twins, Descenders, and the inevitable fall of Teyvat. And although Teyvat's fate is destined to be tragic, Genshin Star will allow you to ascend. Genshin Star is a fan-made online store with a wide assortment of Genshin Impact and Honkai merchandise to choose from. With the holidays approaching, Genshin Star has released Christmas Advent calendars. Each calendar comes with 24 numbered doors that have surprise gifts behind them. These calendars are a great way to get into the holiday spirit by yourself or with family and friends, but they're selling out fast, so don't miss out and get one while you can. You can also use my code, SYNCS, at checkout or use my link in the description to get a 10% discount. While supporting my channel, Genshin Star has also released new phone cases, some of which even glow in the dark. And if you place an order for over $50, you get free shipping. So what are you waiting for? Rise beyond the fate bestowed upon you and seize the sale. Thank you, Genshin Star, for sponsoring today's video. Let's start with a brief recap of Fontaine's prophecy and how it was averted. Egeria, the previous Hydroarchon, committed the sin of creating a new human race without getting approval from Celestia first. As punishment and for purification, Celestia set a prophecy for Fontaine.
The people will all be dissolved into the waters, and only Farina will remain, weeping on her throne.
In order to save Fontaine, Focalers devised a plan to trick the heavenly principles and change fate. To do so, she split her divinity and made a mortal form of herself, Farina. Farina was tasked with masquerading as the Hydroarchon, Focalers, until she had generated enough indemnitium to carry out judgment on herself and Celestia. With the use of the Oratress, Focalers ended herself along with the divine throne of authority, which the role of the Hydroarchon was established upon. This allowed her to return Nuvilet's elemental authority to him so he could restore his full dragonhood and use his authority to forgive the people of Fontaine for their sins. But the flood itself had to happen for the heavenly principles to believe the prophecy occurred. So Nuvilet turned the blood of the people of Fontaine into real blood, allowing them to avoid being dissolved, successfully averting fate. So, what exactly is fate? I believe that fate is a system which uses people's connections to Iriminsel to dictate the direction of their lives. The stars in the sky that make up constellations are merely fruits of Iriminsel, which contain people's lives and memories. This is why astrologers that use hydromancy like Mona are able to predict people's fate by using their constellations' reflection on water. This is also why the shooting stars and unreconciled stars came from people's constellations and put those who touched them into dreams of the memories and ambitions of those whose constellations they came from. And according to Nahida, Fontaine's prophecy was carved into Iriminsel itself.
People often say that wisdom isn't about what you know, but knowing what you can change. It is beyond question that the prophecy was carved into Irminsul long ago. And while it may look like nothing has changed, it also seems like everything has. I think we both know her to be smart enough to turn the fate of the world around.
This is why people who aren't bound by Iriminsel aren't under fate's control. They aren't tied to the system that dictates fate. But since all life on Teyvat is tied to Iriminsel, those native to it are essentially prisoners to fate. Nuvilet shares this disdain and reveals the truth of constellations and fate in his character story 5. One is great as he should have no need for a constellation to shine over him. After all, fate is merely the manner in which the present ruler of this world plays with living beings. In other words, Teyvat is a jail cell, and the head guard is fate, the system used to control all life within Teyvat. But although Iriminsel dictates the fate of Teyvat's life, it cannot avoid Teyvat's inevitable destruction. In order to control Teyvat, the Primordial One used its eggshell to create a firmament, separating the universe from the world. The Primordial One may have been fans, it had wings and a crown, and was birthed from an egg, androgynous in nature, but for the world to be created, the eggshell had to be broken. However, fans, the Primordial One, used the eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. This firmament serves as Teyvat's jail, limiting those within it. If one could break free from the eggshell, they may be able to free themselves from their predetermined fate. And when Child's constellation lights up the sky during the fight against the all-devouring narwhal, it cracks the sky and breaks through the constellation, suggesting the narwhal ascended past fate. The crack in the sky that the narwhal makes is also seen in Reen's world formula, but more on that later. The idea of the firmament eventually getting destroyed is also hinted at in Nubilet's teapot voice line, where he speaks of needing to break free from the eggshell to live freely.
If you too find yourself subject to grave injustice, yet bound by rules that are twisted and warped, you must be willing to step up and right those wrongs. If you cannot break free from the eggshell, the world is not but a prison where you are blinded and confined. Do not be afraid of bleak desolation and poverty outside the prison, and do not fret about your stable rations being cut off once the prison is destroyed. Outside that world, I will always be waiting for you.
Simply put, people can only live freely after the firmament and fate are destroyed. This may even be that Tsaritsa's plan with the noses, and what she means when she asks the traveler to burn away the old world for her in the cryo-gemstone description. But this still raises the question of why such a cruel and tyrannical system could be created by someone whose most beloved creations were humans? After all, the Archons who were chosen to rule over the 7 nations weren't chosen only for their strength, but also based on their love for humanity. Was it all a lie? Or is Nubilet and many others unaware of the pure intentions of Celestia? Although it's easy to say that fate and the firmament were established to control and limit the people of Teyvat, I believe it serves a greater purpose, protecting Celestia's beloved humans from the dangers outside the firmament. In the most fantastical stories or outrageous lies, the stars found in the depths of the cosmos might be teeming with life, much like Teyvat, and the universe itself is akin to an ocean. Realistically speaking, however, if a profound universe full of life exists, why hasn't any of that life made contact with Teyvat? Maybe the universe has been constantly trying to infiltrate Teyvat, or maybe a higher power created borders to protect this world. This description comes from the all-devouring narwhal, the otherworldly beast feeding on Teyvat's primordial seawater. If Nubilet had not stopped the all-devouring narwhal, it would have gone on to devour the people of Fontaine and the rest of Teyvat's primordial sea. Teyvat is also the Hebrew word for ark, and Noah built an ark to protect him and his family from the great flood God sent to destroy the earth. But if Teyvat is the ark, why does it need to protect people from the universe? My long-held belief is that the universe is the abyss, or heavily connected to it. Aside from their undeniable visual similarities, and the fact Absol creatures are said to come from universal darkness, Child encountered the all-devouring narwhal after falling into the abyss. I have a video going into more depth if you're interested, but the point I'm making is that the borders created by the higher power were made to protect Teyvat from the abyss, which may be akin to a black hole. With this in mind, breaking free from the eggshell, as Nubilet suggests, would just let the abyss flood Teyvat, engulfing the thrones and corrupting its life. This was also the result of Reen's world formula, which was used to prophesize the end of Teyvat. The firmament had been cracked, and Teyvat was engulfed by the abyss and devoid of life. But this shouldn't come as a surprise, given the destructive history of the abyss. From almost corrupting Arimensal and destroying Teyvat to mere creatures from the abyss, successfully destroying entire nations to Ken Ryer itself being in a war against the abyss. Before the cataclysm, the abyss could undoubtedly destroy Teyvat. But since Celestia has completely blocked people from witnessing any good or bad that lies beyond the firmament, people presume it's another control method. This desire to know more eventually leads to people going against Celestia and looking beyond the firmament themselves. And if the sinking of Remeria into the abyss, or the fall of Deshret civilization caused by Absol power isn't enough to prove how dangerous searching beyond the firmament is, I don't know what is. This isn't to say that Celestia is perfect, or hasn't done anything wrong, but had Celestia not created fate and the borders that limit people, the concept of life itself, regarding Teyvat, may have ceased to exist. Perhaps those in Celestia came from another world lost to the abyss, which is why they thought it'd be best to create the firmament for Teyvat. They wanted to protect it before the abyss could consume it. But just as light cannot escape from the vortex of darkness, cause and effect is attached to fate, perhaps irreversibly so. Despite Celestia's attempts at controlling fate, the abyss has the final say in what happens. This is why people must use Absol powers in their attempts to go against the fate dictated by Celestia. If Celestia doesn't have complete control over fate, it would also explain why the all-devouring narwhal is what kicked off Fontaine's prophecy. Considering Celestia built the firmament to keep the Abyss out paired with their disdain for the Abyss and invaders, I strongly doubt Celestia would want to send an Absol beast just to target Fontaine. Celestia may only be able to control the outcome of the life bound to a Rimensol rather than the steps to reach it, unless something Absol interferes, the cause and effect that are irreversibly linked. After all, fate itself is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and people only meet the destruction they wish to prevent when they try going against it. That includes Celestia.
So, what you're saying is, even though we decided to put on this trial to avoid fulfilling the prophecy, in truth, everything we've done has happened exactly as the prophecy foretold. So now, it seems, we're the ones making sure it comes true.
Huh. No matter what, the prophecy will be fulfilled. Is this what it feels like to be a prisoner of fate?
But if one could control the Abyss itself, they may have the ability to change fate for the better, freeing everyone from its shackles while preventing destruction. One such as a Descender. In a note left behind by the Nazi San Cruz Ordo, someone talks about the requirements for someone to be considered one of the 4 Descenders. This, too, is my goal. For not all that comes from beyond may be as one that descends. That title belongs only to wills that can rival an entire world. That is what I seek, the way to become just such a will. One that can protect the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, and create the world. In other words, not all who descend have a will that's strong enough to be considered a descender, and some are still bound by Teyvat's fate. It's likely that this is why the Abyss sibling isn't counted as one of the 4 Descenders, and has information about themselves on a Rimensol despite allegedly coming from beyond Teyvat. But those like the Traveler, who are considered Descenders, have a will powerful enough to challenge Teyvat and fate and aren't bound by a Rimensol. The Sustainer of Heavenly Principles may have been aware of the Traveler's status, which is why she sealed the Traveler's power and sent them down to Teyvat to sleep for 500 years, while the Abyss Twin got sent back to Kenraya. This may also be why Paimon conveniently got fished up by the Traveler and has been guiding them around Teyvat. Remember Nuvilet's voice line about constellations and fate being used to contain and control people? Well, as pointed out by Ashikai, the Traveler did not have a constellation until after interacting with the Mondstadt Statue of 7. This leads me to believe that by tapping into the statue and its power, the Traveler was linked to a Rimensol, allowing Celestia to monitor them. And who led the Traveler to the Statue of 7? Paimon? Although I don't believe Paimon is choosing to be evil or trick the Traveler, I wouldn't be surprised if Celestia is secretly using her to make sure the Traveler doesn't get enough power to take control. But since the Traveler was assigned the fate to protect and save Teyvat from burning, it's very possible Celestia is raising the Traveler to be the new god of Celestia, but I will cover that possibility in a future video. Returning to the note, we see that the person did believe it was possible for someone who wasn't initially a Descender to become one and change fate. Focalers is an example of someone changing the course of the world, since she averted Fontaine's fate by subverting the god's gaze to Farina, the false Archon. During Nicole's conversation with the Traveler and Paimon, she spoke of fate only being things through the eyes of the gods and that things take place, where their gaze does not fall.
Just as prophecies are usually only the future as seen from the perspectives of the gods, could things be happening in hidden corners where the god's gaze does not fall? Are the things that you shall see different from the fate that the gods perceive?
The physical abyss and Kenraya are the places where the god's gaze does not fall, and their perceptions of fate do not affect the people there.
But in the hidden corners where the god's gaze does not fall, there are those who dream of dreaming.
This may be why Kenraya summoned Aether and Lumen to Kenraya. They wanted a Descender to help them change the world. But unbeknownst to them, the Abyss sibling isn't one of the 4 Descenders, so they couldn't accomplish what was expected of them. This is why Clather says, Kenraya initially hoped the Abyss sibling would bring them to a brighter future, but they were led to destruction instead.
We once believed that you would bring new strength and hope to Conria. To us, you were the Abyss. A wondrous mystery far beyond our imagination and comprehension. And the one who controls the abyss can control everything. We yearned for that future. We looked to you to take us there. But what did you bring us instead? Oh, Prince of Conria.
To avert the god's gaze, the Abyss sibling may be traveling through or hiding in the Abyss. At the same time, they're looking for ways to revive Kenrya, which is why their Irremental records began getting obfuscated as they finished their journey in Teyvat. By utilizing the Abyss sibling hopes they'll garner enough power to go against Destiny, so their war won't be over until it engulfs Teyvat.
Until the Abyss has engulfed the thrones, my war with Destiny will see no end.
But if King Deshret's disaster was anything to go by, the will of the Abyss may engulf the Twin, leaving the Traveler to defeat or purify them. So, what does the newfound information on Descenders mean for the Tsaritsa? And what does she plan to do with the Seven Noses? During the Fontaine Arcan quest, we learned that the Seven Noses were created using the remains of the third Descender. For some currently unknown reason, the third Descender was extremely compatible with the Seven Elements and could even enhance them. With this in mind, that Tsaritsa may want to revive the third Descender using the Seven Noses. After doing so, she may ask them to help her change Teyvat's fate in return for bringing them back. The third Descender would also be incentivized to help, considering Celestia used their corpse to create the Seven Noses, assuming the third Descender didn't give them permission. Since the Noses draw power from the elemental authority that resides in the thrones in Celestia, the third Descender may be able to draw it into themselves, giving them the power needed to truly change fate or even to burn away the old world. But what I find more likely is that Tsaritsa and Datori will use the Seven Noses to create their own Descender, who will serve as the new god of Teyvat. When Datori was first offered a position in the Fadui, he went as far as to say that he could create a god for the Tsaritsa. This became much more literal in Sumeru when he used the Electro-Gnosis in a mechanical body to turn Scaramouche into a god. Although they never got the chance to implement the 168 capsules they'd procured for Scaramouche to reach complete divinity, he was still able to become a true god. But despite the creation of a god being the pinnacle of human wisdom to the Academia, Datori viewed it all as a mere experiment, a proof of concept. If Scaramouche was a mere prototype created with just one Gnosis, a god created with all seven noses would be at a level of divinity that surpasses the Archons and the Dragons, a creation powerful enough to challenge Celestia and the Abyss. Two things that Tsaritsa wants to eradicate. We share the same goal, you, Tsaritsa, and I. Cleanse the sources of distortion in this world, short-sighted, ignorant gods and the darkness and corruption of the Abyss. To conclude today's video, let's do a quick summary. Constellations and foreseen fate are self-fulfilling prophecies dictated by Irremental that were created to control and protect Teyvat from the Abyss. That Tsaritsa plans on using the Seven Noses to create a god powerful enough to challenge fate as well as Celestia and the Abyss to create a world free of suffering. The four Descenders also have wills powerful enough to change the world, sustain the world, destroy the world, and create the world, which may be connected to the primordial ones for aspects. The Abyss sibling may be trying to become one of the four Descenders to change fate and revive Kenrya, creating what they consider the perfect world. But if history is anything to go by, perfection is a finite ideal. And if the Traveler becomes the new ruler of Teyvat, they'll have a choice to make. Will they go against their twin to protect their new world, or will they stand by their side and allow Teyvat to get destroyed? If it's the latter, the Traveler and Paimon may end as enemies like the Abyss sibling and Dainsleif. Thank you all for watching. I originally planned to cover everything in Fontaine and how it heavily relates to Kenrya and Teyvat's cycle in this video, but it would have been all over the place. Instead, I plan on making more follow-ups to this video, the truth of Ascension and Celestia's sacred plan. But I'd like to hear what you think. Is Celestia protecting humans, controlling them, or both? If you've enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and/or subscribing. I hope you all have a great rest of your days, evenings, and nights. See you in Natlan.